Welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no staff stopping you. Happy Monday morning, everyone. It's episode 106 here on the show. Hope you had a great weekend and pretty good, interesting weekend, actually, for me on a baseball standpoint, because we had our first 7-inning doubleheader, which is the way they're doing things now in this day and age of COVID. So it means that I went into work for a little bit on Friday, got sent back home because of rain up in Minneapolis, and got to spend the night with the family and some friends, and then back at it for 2 games on Saturday, which were 7 innings each. So it actually felt really doable. So that was something new. Always fun to see that. And I was up late last night watching hockey. That's the thing that my family and I do. We're actually a hockey family. My son plays, but we were watching the St. Louis Blues, who went well after midnight. And so it's good to just be able to spend all that time together. And now back at it for baseball later tonight, rounding the bases today. And I'm super, super, super excited about my guests today, because it's a topic that I'm aware of being a big deal, but don't know enough yet. And so it's something I want to really learn about. Before we do that, I want to thank my friends at KCAV for providing the studios and all the setup here. They can take care of all of your audio visual needs, and on a much bigger level than a dude with a podcast. So check them out, kcav.com. Any office size, shoot, they can take care of your sports needs and scoreboards and things like that too. But hope you will take a look at them, kcav.com. My guests here on this episode are really doing some amazing things, and they're doing so with multiple different companies or organizations. So I'm really excited right now to be joined by Josey and Sam Kulikov, and they have their hands, as I mentioned, in a lot. First off, we have Social Apex, and then we have the Kansas City Pioneers. If you don't know what that is, I could explain it, but they could explain it better. So let's jump in right now with the co-founders of those organizations, Josey, Sam Kulikov. Sam, I don't even know where to begin. Do we begin with Pioneers? Do we begin with Social Apex? Let's start first and foremost with Social Apex, although I think the conversation will really pivot quickly into esports. Tell me about Social Apex and what you guys do in a world that right now, I think you can tell me, but over these last 4 or 5 months has really changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really right now we're seeing that is evident is that digital and communicating your brand elements online, and whatever medium that is, through social media, through YouTube, through Google ads, whatever it might be, if you're not out there and promoting your brand and your brand standards, as well as the things that you stand for, you're going to have a hard time connecting with some of the more modern day consumers, right? So that's what Social Apex is truly great at, which is connecting brands to modern consumers. We do that through a couple ways, which is through strategic ideas, so strategy and brand positioning. So brand positioning really looks a lot like videography and developing, unique campaigns, a 6-month to a year campaign, just really digging in and figuring out how can we utilize, whether it's video, photo, graphic, animations. On top of that, by using a strategy, how can we make a real result for a client by connecting them to the customer that they're looking for, or even the customer that they didn't know existed before that. So there's a lot of different ways, but the way that I would best describe it is we approach every client or partner that we work with a very fluid mentality, not with crystallized intelligence. We want to make sure that we're addressing everybody with a unique viewpoint, because we know that each situation, dependent on the brand, is very particular. So we would like to diagnose, work together with people, and really figure out what are the problems or the things that they want to address, and then build the best plan of action for that.
Which is, I think, Mark, and you've got an interesting background. Well, we all have interesting backgrounds, I think, but I just, it's such an interesting time to me. I mean, what you guys are doing right now with Social Apex, people, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, would have been like, "You're doing what? What? Right?" I mean, the world changes. I mean, it's like, I tell kids all the time, and then I sound like the get off my lawn guy. But when I was a high school and college kid coming up, we didn't even have cell phones to be able to practice being on TV if that's what you want to do. Like every kid right now has more practice at being on TV than I did, and I wanted to be on TV because you have all of these tools. And so I think in my experience here, as I've tried to create a brand over the last few years, Mark, is that a lot of people don't know how to do that. I certainly didn't, and they don't understand the importance of content and getting out there. So talk about that. And I think Sam hit on something too, Mark, that was interesting too, is that each one of these clients really do have different needs. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that, and also building those relationships right now during a time where we're all at a distance, but this is all doable.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right? Like, what does your brand look like? What does your company look like in today's current environment, right? Whether that's COVID and your response and how you engage your clients and customers, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, like, what is your message? How are you connecting? And I think it's contextual, right? So, if you, and I'm not going to rewind the tapes and say like, hey, the context in the early days of marketing was print and media is a little bit different than today, right? It's 24/7, 365. Your brand could be amplified by anything, average person, paid media, organic, right? So there's so many different things. I think what marketing looks like today is simple, but not easy, right? It's one, who are you? What do you stand for? Who is your customer? Who is your audience? How do you make content, and all these different points along the way that can engage them, right? Because nobody's going to look at one thing and have some ginormous call to action, right? Maybe besides like a follow or something, right? And then you're even seeing like, hey, followers are great, but it doesn't necessarily mean engagement, and reach is a little bit different as well. So I think just thinking in the context of like, where are my customers? Who are they? Where are they at, right? How many different points of touch points can I get between now and then making a decision to do A, B, or C? And then how do I craft some kind of message that is integral to who I am? And then also add some value, which is probably the biggest key of it all, right? Like what it's less about you, it's more about them, whether it's your personal brand or whether, it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, or if you're a challenger brand or you're leading the market. It's like, people want value, they want authenticity, they want transparency, which sounds really simple, but it's hard to do. And then so what happens is you probably sit down and go, great, I figured out A, B, and C. I know my customers, this is what they look like, here's my competition. Now what do I do? And then that generally tends to be the problem. And or you have the solution, and then it's just like slow and steady wins the race is really hard to stick with every single day, right? You're not going to get famous overnight. You're not going to get 1 million customers overnight. Your SaaS product is not going to be downloaded 10 million times in 2 weeks because you did one PR launch, or you sent out 3 Instagram posts, or, you know what I mean? So I think that is a little bit of frustrating, but you have to look at small, tiny, bite-sized pieces, and eventually you'll get there.
Well, that, by the way, that's been the world since it existed. Every now and then somebody might stumble into something that goes viral. And I'm not even talking in terms of social media, whatever it is in life, every now and then. And I've said that in the broadcast world. I mean, I'm much more typical of a lot of broadcasters. I started small and climbed my way up, and next step and next step and next step. And always chasing whatever that next big city and that next big job was. And everyone coming out of school they want to do what I'm doing today. So I mean, that's no different than social media, Sam. I mean, and I see it with my kids. I see it with that. They all want to find that one piece of content that's going to go viral, and suddenly it blows up their career. Isn't that sort of akin to winning the lottery anyway? I mean, there's got to be a long-term plan here.
Yeah, well, I think that it boils down to the fact that there is no everyone, and this is kind of a life lesson, I think, as well as marketing, but everyone's looking for a destination for their brand, right? So everyone's looking for, once I go viral, then everything will be great. Like, once I go viral, I'm going to sell out. I'm going to be so famous, so successful. Once I go viral, all I have to do is flex on social media, and then I'll make it. But they don't realize that if this is something you truly love, it's something you need to get comfortable with doing every day for the rest of your life. If this is something you truly are passionate about, it's going to be a roller coaster. It is for everyone. If you ask anyone who's successful, it's always a roller coaster. There's never been someone that just goes up, 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 and up, and just never stops. That's not how it works. It's about controlling and understanding the current climate, the customer mentality, what the social climate looks like, and then analyzing how you can engage and interact with your community, whether that's through content, outreach, and those types of things. You know, there's a lot of brands that we could name right now from Kansas City that do amazing business and do a lot of marketing, but then also do a ton of community engagement. They do things in the back end that are really building the relationship with stakeholders and shareholders. That's also marketing. So when people say, oh, I want to go viral, I always ask them, what happens next, right? So once you go viral, what happens next? Because they're always ready for that, you know, quote unquote, but they're never ready for what that reality is. And it's because they're impatient most of the time. I don't want to be too harsh, but generally they're impatient to find this destination, right? And then turn social media into this conversion tool, when really social media is your community management and indexing tool, right? It's your way to connect with people and to understand how they feel about you.
It's so fascinating. And, you know, I agree with that in the sense that if you're lucky enough to catch wildfire, great. What's your story? Who are you? What are you about? And that's the branding element of things. Kiana writes in, that's true brand impact, telling your stories. I tell people all the time, it's all about content. It's all about storytelling. And then Mike Wilson was a guest on the show on Friday. So he wants to know, how do you feel, Mark, about the relationship between brand and customer service, or how do you feel the relationship between brand and customer service should look in these times? I think that's a really interesting one to me. And then I want to move on to KC Pioneers, because really my curiosity here is involving what you guys do with esports. But this is interesting. This is such a different time right now. People are launching business. People are trying to save businesses. People are trying to find a spot in the marketplace at a time where we're all at home, or most of us are at home. So how would you answer this question?
Yeah. So Michael, what I would say is that we have a certain expectation of consumers of brands to be authentic and transparent. And we also have an expectation of brands engaging directly with their customers. So it is not good enough to not have, you know, a customer advocacy program, a customer support program. It's not good enough to not respond to DMs on social media because they didn't go to your info at whatever, or they didn't fill out the web thing. Your presence goes from, your presence goes from acquisition to retention. So it's a super important retention tool, right? Like, and I don't know, I'm sure there's a ton of, analysis and stuff. Like if you look at Buffer and Sprout and some of the other advocacy tools and management tools, where you can look at, hey, how many people feel great about a brand because of their response time, right? So it's very similar to like the old adage of, if you have one positive customer, they'll tell whatever it was, 9 people. And if you have one negative customer, they'll tell 100. Obviously today it's like, they'll tell 100 people if it's positive, and then it will go potentially viral, hundreds of thousands of people if it's a negative experience, right? And it's very similar to thinking that in terms of how you interact. So I would say responsiveness, authenticity, really making customers feel like it's a one-on-one experience is super important. So if you don't have that strategy in terms of once you get all of your customers, how do you take care of them? That should be a significant portion of it.
100%.
Okay, I want to move on, although I had a couple more social media type of questions for you on the back end. But I want to talk about esports, and I want to talk about Pioneers, because and it's not like, Mark, I think you and I met and talked recently, and it's not like we were talking and I was like, oh my God, esports is a thing. I mean, I knew that. It's not. I actually think my wake-up call was maybe, I want to say the year before last. I had a guest. I do Kansas City Mavericks hockey, usually about 10 games a year I call for them on TV. And one of my intermission guests was, I think, from Park University. And I think he was talking about scholarships they have for esports. Mm-hmm. And I'd never heard that before. And so that it actually made sense, but I'd never thought about it, right? I mean, I thought about scholarships in terms of academics or in terms of, sports that you're playing, not playing a video game, but it made sense to me. But I think that where my eyes really opened was when you started talking about not just the interest, but the numbers and the money involved in this thing. And it really got me because, the easy thing to do would be this. I'm not going to watch a bunch of kids playing video games. Why would I want to do that? And when I think that or hear somebody saying that, because I could hear it, that just reeks of, well, we never did that before. That's not the way things always were. And right now, I find myself during this pandemic just more focused on change than I've ever been focused on before. It's almost like the world stopped and you could kind of watch the change that was happening if you were paying attention. And I think it always has been, but we get so caught up in our ways. So it's a long way of me saying, Sam, how massive is the esports industry and what do you guys like about it?
Wow. Well, that's a loaded question. There's a lot there. We'll probably have to split this up between Mark and I because there's a lot of goodness in there. But really, at its core, I guess I'll start with your anecdote about how people are like, well, why would I watch kids play video games? I would relate that to when baseball first started, right? So you've got a not formalized sport yet before the league started. It's just people with balls and sticks, and people are like, well, why would I go into a stadium and watch some guys hit a ball with a stick and run around bases, right? So that argument we hear a lot, but that's how I would diffuse that, is saying, look, it's a game. It's something that people do to interact and engage with each other, and esports is simply the professionalization of that like fun play, right? Because baseball started out as fun and then it became professionalized. Therefore, same from video games to esports. It's a game that's become professionalized, right? So there's a lot to dissect there, and we don't necessarily need to go into the massive the numbers behind it, just because there's a lot of different things that go beyond. But one of the things that really stands out to me is that there's a huge report that was out in late 2019, and it shows that last year, or 2018, the year before, there was $490 million of investment. And in 2019, we saw $4.5 billion of investment into the industry. And so why I bring that up is because it's very indicative to me that businesses are starting to understand the viability, not only in esports, but in gaming, and then also in the curation of communities and in investment into brands, right? So if you see Geico and Allstate and these brands investing into these different esport companies, organizations, you know that there's definitely some inherent value going on there, right? So that's at a high level. On a more basic level, the exposure, as you mentioned, there's so many opportunities to get involved, right? So whether you're a professional gamer or a habitual gamer, you can also be a streamer, a content creator. You can go into developing games. You can also be a coder. You can create computers. I know people who make a living strictly off of creating modded computers for people, right? So the industry at large is not just involving people who professionally play. The reason it's so lucrative is because there's an opportunity for young people of all different races, from different places, from different backgrounds. They can all work together to create organizations, partnerships, and different ways to connect and build communities, whether that's through World of Warcraft or Rocket League or Gears of War or Call of Duty. What we're seeing is that kids are finding ways to connect with each other in a more immersive way than that was ever allowed before, right? So I'll end my portion and let Mark go in with saying this, that we always say that stories are the most effective way of communicating information, and esports is the most immersive way to tell a story in today's day and age, right? So that's why I think esports is so powerful and why its market potential is so, so explosive.
Yeah, so I'll add on to that. So, a couple things. One, today, esports is a fan-based ecosystem. So that's exciting for both endemic and non-endemic brands, right? Folks that are specific into like esports and gaming, and then folks that are interested in content. So you have fans, you have streamers, you have teams, you have competitions, you have the publishers of the games, and then you have fans at the top and brands, or vice versa, right? Who's just all around this circle. And that's how, tournament winnings and revenue and tickets and merch and ad revenue or whatever is generated. So a couple things I would say. One, definitely COVID impacts slightly from an esports perspective, but it's still trending to be about $1 billion addressable market from a revenue perspective, which is crazy, right? And then number two, if you think about, that fan-based ecosystem, there's a couple of ways to break it up, right? So if you're a business or a brand, you can think, hey, these are really interesting segments because I can get into, Gen Z, millennials, and then also I can get into the esports, writ large. And then B, if you understand that and you're interested and you're kind of talking about what Sam, or if you're thinking about what Sam is, am I a gamer, am I a streamer, am I a content creator? I can go on Twitch, which is where, people live stream their content and their games and such. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can make a connection. I can build a fan base. I can start building my own personal brand, doing something that I love that's a little bit different out of the box. Oh, wait, I can monetize 3 or 4 different things. And before you know it, it's crazy. And I'll just add one more crazy stat. Like in the second quarter, 5 billion hours of Twitch users streamed. Wow. Like just think about that for a second. And I'll give you one more. And I don't know what I'm going to guess the Royals viewership, but we played in a Rocket League tournament, our professional Rocket League team, and which we might be getting ahead discussing. But, it's all of the top Rocket League teams in North America. We ended up being top 16 as it continues to progress, and we'll, continue to work our way onto a tournament. While we won for one piece of the pie, we'll say it was like maybe 25 minutes, 79,000 people watched us play. Just on one little Twitch channel, it's just insane, right? So that's a couple of things to think about it. And then the last thing, which is a good tie-in, is the brand. So that, so the kind of the differences is also the reason why it continues to blow up is because, hey, traditional stick and ball sports, either are still paused today or they're, varying their season or they're not sure if they're going to start. And a month ago, it was even a little bit uncertain. So people started going into gaming, into streaming. So your average, maybe mom and dad who were like, well, I guess I'll pick up Call of Duty or I'll play Animal Crossing or I'll do whatever. And then you start realizing like, oh, this is not so bad. And I think what's happening, Joel, is people are making a connection of, if my daughter or son was outside shooting hoops or shagging some balls or whatever for 3 or 4 hours a day, I would be fine. What's different from them playing Rocket League or, Call of Duty or Gears of War? I mean, they're, in terms of that's a sport, that's whatever. And then the final point is you can connect so much more directly, right? So imagine if you're a huge streamer, you could say, hey, Sam, thanks for joining in the chat. And that's huge, right? So imagine Patrick Mahomes stopping to say, hey, like section 215 row, B, seat 12. I really appreciate you, man. Good job. And you're like, whoa. So I know that was a lot, but those are some really interesting thoughts. And I think really specific to why esports continues to grow outside of the traditional, esports lane.
Well, I'm interested in so many levels of this. And I think I joked with you, Mark, when we talked that I can't, I'm truly showing my age when I totally avoid jumping on with my son and his Xbox One because there's just no way I could keep up with his skills. Like, growing up, we had 2 or 3 buttons. When we were in college, we were playing like the old school NHL 94 Sega Genesis hockey, and it was like 3 buttons, and we'd sit there all night and do it. So I'm the old school guy. But I also understand evolution. And, when I was growing up, the gamers were the kids that were playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And that was your sort of quote unquote gaming community in the form that it was then. And of course the stereotypes went with it. Oh, those are the Dungeons and Dragons kids, or those are the nerds, or whatever you would call it. Right. And then the other kids might be out playing sports. And I think what you're saying is that it doesn't matter what type of kid you are, introverted, extroverted, smartest kid, not as smart, athlete, non-athlete, they're all doing it. I mean, what are the professional athletes when they go on the road doing? They're not out as much as they used to be. And then forget about COVID times, but they go to the room to play video games. They go to the room to interact that way with each other. It's safer. It's the way that they're able to do that. And so that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is I remember sitting on a Royals charter, I would say 2010. and I was trying to pitch some story ideas, and I was the one guy on our crew that was on Twitter. So Twitter was pretty new. I was getting all the interaction with people. And I remember that the producer said, look, no one's going to sit at home. I might have told you this, Mark. No one's going to sit at home and watch a game and be on Twitter too. That they're not going to do two things at once. And I remember disagreeing with him, but not really realizing the level of how right I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I only mention that because when you find yourself, and we all get there, or we will get there at some point, saying, well, wait a minute, this thing is crazy. This thing is new. This is the way we've always, when you sit there and find yourself saying this is the way we've always done it, you got to take a big breath and say, wait a minute, is there a new way now? And so that's what I'm seeing. And so that's what's fascinating to me. And also because you talk about, you don't have to be good with doing all of this. There's so many levels to be involved. I like this one. I remember Rocket League and Street Fighter was going to be part of the Olympics, and people thought that was ridiculous. But is it more ridiculous than watching someone jump on a trampoline? Okay.
Oh my, perfect.
For all the trampoline jumpers out there, no offense meant, of course. No, look, I mean, Sam, I want you to talk about this, because what someone might see as ridiculous, a whole other group sees as not just fun, but a huge opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great transition into a big part of our mission and vision at Kansas City Pioneers, which is, addressing the question first. People are, as Joel mentioned, people are definitely not so privy to letting new things that challenge their concept of what is sports to come in and just invade that. When we know that Street Fighter and FTC and the retro gaming community and the people that are playing those fighting games, that's been in a gaming community for 20, 30, 40 years. Like, that is a long-standing community of people and very prestigious and long-standing. Rocket League is a little bit newer, but it's garnering thousands and thousands and thousands of concurrent viewership. So who are we to say what people want to see? So that's the first high level, is like, if people want to watch it, you probably should produce it, because you'll make an impact and you'll probably make some money. So it's like, hey, ESPN, you want to capture this new market, you probably want to stream Rocket League. And similar for Olympics, because I guarantee you, like, without even, we have a lot of data on traditional sports. I haven't looked at Olympic, but I'm assuming that under 18 people are not driving in droves to watch the Olympics. That's just a hypothesis off the top of my head, but it does show in our statistics that if you're 18 or under, you're actually watching more hours of video games than you are of traditional sports, which is insane for us to believe, but it's the truth. So on a high level, you have a business responsibility to your stakeholders, if you're a producer or a media network, to promote that type of content, whether you're at the Olympics or ESPN. Now, on the bottom level, which is really close to my heart and our vision here, which is, we look at video games as that these kids just use it to have fun and escape and be lazy, and whatever narrative is pressed on them. But what I always bring it back to is, if these kids find fulfillment and this is something that they love to do, why do we doubt them so much? If they are going in droves to doing this, and they are consuming it at high volumes, who are we as adults or older generations to say that they're wrong? And to say, oh no, you need to learn, this very archaic way, right? Like the example I would give is, imagine the retention difference between, if I taught a 10-year-old, a class of 10-year-olds, and I was trying to teach them basic math, right? If I did it in class, as opposed to, let's see what that retention would be. Now let's put them into a math class in Minecraft, and let's do the same math problems, but we'll do them in video games. And I would venture a guess to say that retention would increase. I don't know by how much, but I guarantee that because you're speaking to them on their level, that they're going to find more interest, they're going to get more retention, and they're going to be heard more, right? And so for me, at the core of it is, we have an opportunity like never before. None of us in this call, or anyone, has had the opportunity at 10, 11 to find self-confidence and to truly start to unpack who we are as people. And video games are giving the younger generation just exactly that, which is the opportunity to find out who they are by building discipline, teamwork, creating and curating relationships. They're doing this real time. One of our great players on our Rocket team, they're incredible. And one of the superstars is 15 years old, and he is incredibly professional, understands how to hold himself. He is always, just very, very refined. And it's like, It's because we're giving them the opportunity to truly unlock who they are as a person at an earlier stage. And people as adults are scared of that because they're like, oh, well, you're 12. You don't know what you want. And it's like, no, but we know that all the sayings are that kids know the truth, that kids know what they want, what they need, right? So we need to come to them. We need to stop pretending like what we have is so awesome and so great when we know that what's going on in our current status quo on many levels is very rotten, right? So we need to give these kids the opportunity to become who they are and also let them trailblaze and lead the way to a brighter future for us.
And look, we see athletes, musicians, actors, actresses at teenage years or even younger for that matter. And look, they make money and sometimes they have teenage kid problems and sometimes they're just salt of the earth, haven't figured out. But look, I mean, we see the Royals and players in baseball drafting kids at 18 years old right out of high school, or 16 years old. They're signing them out of the Dominican Republic. The Royals have a kid right now in Adalberto Mondesi. Mark's rocking his Royals hat that they signed for $2 million at 16 years old. Why? Because he had talent and they believed in him. So when people say, oh my gosh, you're giving a kid that amount of money to play video games, well, what's the response to it? What is the interest in it? If it's driving people to pay money and to be involved, then he has value. Obviously, our buddy Paul jumps in with some of his favorite Sega all-time games. I don't think that I ever played The Lion King, but I'm a little bit older than Paul.
Oh my gosh,
Paul's unbelievable, and he wants to know when Animal Crossing is going to be featured in esports. He's a beauty. Yes, bless your heart. We love you. Golden Jersey, Noise. Noise. I love that one. I'm not too old for that. And then, quite frankly, there's a bunch of stuff on here that I have no idea what people are talking about, which is just going to show my age. But this will all mean stuff to you guys. And so I'm not even going to try to fake through that one. But let's go KCP. That will be Kansas City Pioneers. So we see the logo. We see the golden jersey. Let's start with this, Mark. You've got that logo behind you. Tell me about Kansas City Pioneers.
Yeah, so Kansas City Pioneers, we're a multidiscipline esports team, professional esports team that happens to be based here in Kansas City. Our goal is to be the fourth person in Kansas City, right? So you got the Chiefs, Royals, Sporting, no particular order, by the way, and then the Kansas City Pioneers. There's about 50 of us. We have content creators, streamers, some folks on leadership. We have 3 pro divisions. So we have a professional Rocket League team. We have a professional Gears of War team. We have a semi-pro Valorant team, only because there's not been a huge sanctioned, kind of Valorant tournament type deal. And then also we have a top-ranked Madden player here in Kansas City. I think he was number 5 in the world last year. So that's amazing here in Kansas City. Shout out. So I think for us, a couple of things. That's who we are. And you talked a little bit about, our goal is to go out and win championships. Our goal is to bring economic growth into Kansas City. Our goal is to, of course, be the premier esports team, but also do that by, including people, making sure that we're fostering the right talent, and then building something that's going to last over the next, 40, 50 years, which, I assume is the same mission and vision for, those wonderful championship teams I mentioned earlier. And so, we just closed our first small capital raise. And then this week we're actually just started our next raise, which is $2 million. And that will be, to scale our team, continue to, get players and content creators and continue to be competitive in the space. So we're really excited.
I want to follow up on something here because it'll blow people's minds that don't understand how massive this is and where it's going. What, Mark, would a absolute stud gamer, like a 15-year-old best in the world type of kid, what type of money are we talking about here?
Well, it will depend on what game you're in, but I will tell you, we can start with the streamer. So I think everybody's familiar with Ninja, started in Fortnite brand, been on all the talk shows, first esports gamer that was on Sports Illustrated, has his own shoe deal. So we're talking multi-million dollars, right? And then it could vary from, thousands of dollars, like it could be like a couple of $1,000s to thousands of dollars a month. And we're talking per player, we're talking team house, right? We're talking going on retreats, we're talking house manager. Think about like every infrastructure that you can think about where the Royals would need to travel or to work. It's very similar, right? Like, so the short answer is a lot, and that's just in salary, right? Like, there's also bonuses, there's also sponsorship deals. There's so many opportunities to monetize, right? If they're on Twitch, you can get donations, you can get subscription revenue. If your YouTube channel is great, and this is traditional for everyone, the more views you get, you hit 1 million views, that's $5,000, right? So like, and it's not hyperbole to say that most of our significant streamers and pro players are doing really, really well. Like, really well, probably better than the average American aggregate, right? And that just should be a glaring statistic or whatever. And I would also say that it's not to exploit, right? It's also to when we think about our organization, right? Because Sam mentioned that we just signed a 15-year-old professional Rocket League player who we compensate, right? And who will go out and win tournaments, who crushed it with 2 of his teammates on the virtual Rocket League field, which, for those that you don't know, Rocket League is cars hit the soccer ball into a goal. It's amazing. So exciting. But we take it very serious, right? We don't want to be exploitative. We don't want to come in late to the game from an esports perspective and go like, oh, how can we, get these kids locked in under crappy deals and, make them do A, B, and C. Like, we're talking to their parents. Some of them have managers. Some of them have agents, right? So there is so much that goes through it. It's like we have a legal team who, that is part of our operating expense. So we can make sure that we can protect the integrity of their brand, their experience. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, but that was going a little bit deeper and wider, but a lot is the answer.
Sam, put your marketing hat on here. It's like the perfect combination, right? I mean, esports and marketing, I don't know how they couldn't go hand in hand.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because I say it all the time. Mark will attest. Esports, again, like I said, so we're looking at marketing. Marketing is communication of a concept to incite some sort of action, right? So at its core concept, right? So with that, if we're talking about that, then we're talking about usually using stories, right, to communicate information, whether that's through an emotional story or an informative story or whatever that might be. So if that's the case, if stories and efficient stories do the best marketing job, then you would think that the most immersive storytelling platforms would likely be the best place to be marketing. For example, we talk about high-level sponsorship. So the sponsorship, about 60% of esports, of the revenues in that industry are through sponsorships, because there's so much money getting pumped in. Now, the way I look at it is there's 2 types of sponsors. So there's a sponsor that knows that the opportunity is there, and they understand that esports is important, but they don't necessarily understand the nuances quite yet. So they slap their logo on, they pay $100K or $2, they get their logo on a jersey. They do those more traditional marketing things. But then you have people like Geico, where they'll make a commercial where they put the gecko on the car in Rocket League, and he's talking to you while the car is driving through the field, and then they score and he gets blown off the car. Or like State Farm, where they call a streamer and the streamer picks up Dr. Lupo and says, "Hey, Jake, what's going on? And you want a game?" And then he puts on his headset and they play a game. So now imagine if you're 12, 13 years old, you're not buying renter's insurance yet. But when you see Geico doing that, the brand equity development there is incredible. I mean, talk about contextual marketing. You are coming to them where they are, when they're there, like with the exact pointed message, right? So to really answer your question, esports and like I always say that esports is the greatest advancement, like technological advancement since like the creation of the internet. It's the next level that we can truly engage and interact and really, really connect with people in a way that we've never been able to before. So to compound on that, the main thing I would say is that with marketing, we're trying to connect with people. And for Mark and I and the team at Social Apex, especially, our goal is to connect and to use stories to make a difference, right? And to connect and make change, right? And so that translates a lot to Kansas City Pioneers. And what that makes me feel like is if we can build a team that's supported by the city, that can be here for 50 to 100 years and continuously giving back, and not only being a part of the community, but if we can lift younger people up, and we can lift up people from different backgrounds, from different ages, female, male, whatever background, whoever you are, imagine the feeling of lifting a world champion, a 12-year-old girl, and she can have a jersey, and everyone in Kansas City can see that. All the 12-year-olds in Kansas City will see that, wow, I can be that. I can be successful. Like, we have an opportunity to use marketing in one of the most positive ways that we ever have, which is empowering the youth to be leaders and to change the world. Like, it's immense. And so I'm so glad I wake up and I'm blessed. Just blessed to work with the team that we have. Like, it's honestly an honor.
How many other Kansas City Pioneers are there out there?
There's well, right now, so interesting enough, it was we started almost I think it's a year ago, almost exact year soon, or it was, but it's been going very fast, needless to say. But before COVID, there was about 6, 7, 8 of us. I think maybe around 10, and now we're pushing 70. So there's a lot of different people involved. I mean, we've got broadcasters, producers, we've got content creators, we've got the creative team, we've got animators, 3D editors, you know, everyone is tuned in to this main mission. And you know why? It's because it's not marketing in terms of us like, you know, selling them anything, but it's more in the terms of us building the team and understanding that marketing is more than just saying that you're about something. It's about being that. And so Mark and I and our leadership, Alex and LJ and Jeremy, are incredible just partners and have supported us amazingly. And the way that we really do this is that we talk to our players every week. We're always connecting with them, always talking to them, asking them if there's something else that we can change or do better. How can we grow? How can we better assist you? And then just constantly having that open dialogue. And that is part of, you know, to bring this back, this is why it's hard for people to do marketing in the 21st century, is because they have to reflect it internally, right? So not only does your story and your brand have to be represented, but internally that has to be reproduced for it to be authentic and for actually to resonate, right? So what you're seeing with Kansas City Pioneers' growth is that through the leadership and our day one people, through our growth of building the right culture and thinking gamer first, people first, giving back, community development, you're seeing within a year, this explosive growth is due to that we set everything else on the sideline. We didn't care about PR. We didn't care about money. We put everything into this, you know, and it shows, because this is what we want. We want people to really believe in something greater than ourselves.
You know, as I'm listening to you talk, Sam, I'm thinking a couple of things. One, we need to do a second version of this episode, because there's so much more to talk about. You just hit on something, and I love doing this when I speak to groups. You know, a lot of corporate speaking is I'll play, say, a soundbite from someone in leadership with the Royals, Ned Yost in the past, Mike Matheny now, and then I'll play a soundbite from my podcast of a CEO. And if you closed your eyes, you wouldn't know which one was in the office and which one was in baseball. And that's what I'm hearing here. And that's why, right as you were saying, I'm like, we need to continue this discussion. You're talking about leadership. You're talking about culture. If I took off the label, they wouldn't know that you were talking about gaming or talking about the corporate world that Mark, I know, so greatly misses from his early years as a profession. I was actually going to ask you, Mark, and then we'll start to wrap it up. What and make sure you unmute yourself here. What it is like to have the freedom, and look, the corporate world's for a lot of people, but you lived in that world and now you're living in this world. And while I think there's so many similarities to structure in terms of culture and leadership and discipline and people, The late David Glass, former owner of the Royals, said to me, "It's always about people, no matter what you do." But yet, this is also a totally different world, and I'm imagining you're loving it.
Yeah, I think for me personally, there was pre-beard and post-beard. That's pre-beard was corporate America, managing 5 states for sales marketing operations with Verizon, moving my family all over the place, then reporting to the president at Sprint, traveling all over the place, managing tons of, $2 billion P&L line item, doing all this crazy stuff. And then you realize like, hey, this is probably not what I want to do at 70, right? I don't want to be in my rocking chair going like, man, if I just would have just focused a little bit harder on EBITDA, right? If I really like stakeholder analysis, so, and whatever, right? So what I think fascinates me about this is that, one, it's the future. 2, you nailed it, Joel, where everything that we're talking about, like this is a business, right? At the end of the day, and the people matter, culture matters, the way that we represent ourselves, like, on and off the field matter. Our voice, our vision matter. And so, and then at the end of the day, there's also financials that matter, right? Like we can't, we have to have people that are good stewards of the business and have experience with doing A, B, and C. And that's why we've, broken it up to have, Lorenzo, LJ, who does such a great job as our chief gaming officer. And he's so connected to being able to dive in and do that. We have Alex Laughlin, who's our chief operating officer, which has managed like NBA 2K leagues. And we have Jeremy Turman, who's our chief partnership officer, who was like, he does enterprise partnerships for DoorDash, right? And then you have my previous experience and you have Sam's previous experience. So from a leadership perspective, we've built something that allows us to apply all of our lessons of, building a team, scaling an organization, doing, past stuff, learning lessons, applying it to this, to things that are going to continue to traject, differently and greatly into the future. And so like, we couldn't be more excited about it. Like, it's just insane. And I'll tell you, I think I said this to you, Joel, like, was it, a year and a half ago, did you think that like, hey, let's go raise like $2 million. Let's get a bunch more people. Let's talk to some pro athletes, VCs, see what's going on. But it's real. And it's because we built a really good foundation, which allows us to scale both, financially and internally, but also from a culture perspective. So you nailed it. I'm so glad you said that, because that's what we believe, right? Like nothing that we do is going to be indicative of like, this is specific to esports, how we lead our team. Not at all.
I told you when we talked, I'm so fascinated by all of this, and I'm not the guy that's going to sit down and watch it, but I'm so interested in the infrastructure to it, the interest to it. By the way, I'll let everybody know right now, and this is the world that you guys live in, that it's not even close. Like by 1,000 times, there have been more comments coming in on what you guys are saying than any show of the first 106 or 105 that I've done. I will very, very gladly admit that I have no idea what the hell most of them mean.
Let's go.
And that's okay. But I so greatly appreciate the interest and the passion that everybody has. I get what's up. I'm giving myself a hard time here too.
Yeah,
being the old guy.
A little bit.
and I'm okay being in that role, but I'm fully embracing it too. And what it shows me is the amount of passion, pride, and interest in it. And so, and that doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. And so I think this is so awesome. I think because I don't know, I find myself thinking big picture now. Like COVID did not mess me up. COVID to me, there's opportunity here. And I don't say this in a selfish way. I say it in a way while fully recognizing that there are a lot of challenges right now and a lot of health challenges and scares for people, wherever you believe or don't believe. This is a scary time. But I've seen so many people rise above the occasion to create something new or to not stand still. And so I sit there and I think, how will we look back 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Like this is, I can feel this will be a turning point, and this will be something where, hey, remember when, remember in 2020, and then this was before 2020 really too, when esports just blew up and it just became a regular part of everybody's lives, right? Where the people like me didn't say, wait a minute, what is this? Like everybody just knew what it was. So I'm really interested in all that. I have a final question for each of you, because I think that these kids will understand, but I'm working on a video that'll go out to a lot of schools all over the place about social media. And of course, I'm going to tell them all the do's and don'ts, and it lives forever and all that type of stuff. So I'll cover that. But what I'd love with both of your expertise in gaming, in social media, in marketing, is, Sam, for that kid out there that just thinks, well, I'm just throwing some stuff out there, and how can just an everyday kid help their own brand in terms of social media?
I'd say first figure out what your brand is. And I think that's one of the hardest parts, right? And so what we're really talking about is figuring out, a lot of people ask Mark and I, or, whether through a lot of different mediums, as well as our other leaders, is how do I do this? How do I get into it? How do I get involved in esports and gaming? And how do I build a brand? How do I build a community? And, our group of creators and streamers are a great testament. They are some of the hardest working people I know. And they're getting their clout that they deserve. They get the success because they've spent hours with no viewers, nothing on there. And it's because they understood who they were. And I'd say to figure that out, a lot of what we talk about with our team is realizing and understanding, who did you want to be when you were younger, right? So I always talk to people in our creative team that I manage and beyond, which is, I want you to be doing what you love to do. If you're not doing what you love to do, you're never going to get the results that you want, and you're never going to get that true fulfillment. So I think it always brings itself back to, like, who did you want to be when you were 6, 7, 8 years old? What were the things that truly made you happy at those moments? Because you were at that moment smart enough to understand what you wanted and still not aware of the cultural influences you had. So I always say that first you need to find your brand. And once you find your brand, it's about curating and creating a community. So it has nothing to do with promoting and spamming links and doing all this stuff. You can ask any of the creators and streamers on our team. It's all about a connection at a time. It's creating a platform for you to engage, finding your voice and your brand so you know who your customer and your consumers are, and then finding a way to connect with them one-on-one, whether that's just holding a stream with 1 viewer or 100 viewers or 500 viewers. So I'd say, Joel, it starts with really figuring out who you are and finding your brand, and then finding out how to build your community one at a time.
And final thought on that, Mark, too, because I think so many kids, and adults for that matter, get completely hung up on how many likes, how many numbers. And so they're just looking for that quick fix. But I think to what Sam's saying, too, if you can push that aside and just build who you are organically, isn't that the most effective?
Absolutely. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So I think everyone could learn from whether Sam's examples of our wonderful streamers and content creators who are just crushing it in the chat, like shout out KCP, because it's true. The same people that have 1 million viewers now started with no one, started with, like, I just love to do this. There's companies that are valuated at $400 million that started out as just doing trick shots on Call of Duty, right? So as it relates to esports, as it relates to your brand, like, what you should care about are people that are connecting and engaging with you. And that takes time, right? That's like finding your audience, finding your group, finding like-minded people, finding people that relate to your content. It takes testing, it takes grinding, as they say, and it takes, like, consistency, right? Like consistency of message, not just showing up. So it's simple but not easy, is what I would say. Rome wasn't built in a day. So test stuff, get creative, engage, build your community. So the likes don't matter. You could have 1,000 likes, and if nobody comments or goes to your link, does it matter? No, it doesn't. I would rather have, like, 20, like, look at this chat. I would rather have, people that comment on my post versus, like, 1,000 people that don't know, because it's too easy and there's too many tricks and there's too many people that are, paying influencers to do this, or paid media is great once you've established some stuff, and we can get into it. So much good stuff to unpack here, but I would say consistency, know your audience, build your community is way more important than any of the other analytics. And if you do that, like, if you build it, they will come. Field of Dreams right there.
No doubt about it. A huge thanks, by the way, to everyone that is chiming in. And you guys can keep on commenting too, and we'll all see it even after this broadcast is over. I would challenge everyone that is watching and commenting right now. Share this with your network. Let's continue to get all of this out there. And I'd love to continue the discussion, guys, because I think that this is so interesting to me. I don't need to tell you what you guys already have. You know that. But I do want to remind everyone that if they want to find out more information about Kansas City Pioneers, you could do so at kcp.gg. And you could also look up Social Apex. I had a feeling we would shift more towards the esports side. It all works together, I know, for you guys. But really, really appreciative. I got to keep making sure that here. Let's go with that one. It is a Pioneers comment, I believe. I don't know if that's coming from one of you guys or one of your people, but let's put KC on the map. And Troy says these guys are comfortable in their own skin. I love what they bring to the table. I would agree with that one. Nicholas Craig, can't wait to hug you all when COVID is over. LOL. Nicholas has been jumping in here. I can't give everybody shout outs on this, but I appreciate all the comments, all the interest, and most importantly, Sam and Mark, thanks so much for spending the time. This was as engaging and even more so of a discussion than I expected. So I really am grateful for it. And I told Mark back, a little while ago, I should have been knocking on your guys' door during the pandemic as an out of work broadcaster, but I think all is okay right now.
If you want to come in for a celebrity broadcast for the Rocket League,
I'm in.
Yeah, always got hot for Joel.
Why not?
Be careful what you wish for.
I told you, Mark. I think it'd be a blast. So I want to do that. I want to start learning what all these comments mean, so I don't sound like such an old dude. But anyway, check them out at Kansas City Pioneers. I appreciate it. Mark, Josey, Sam Kulikov, thanks so much for the engaging visit. Let's do it again.
Awesome.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right. Oops, I just popped Mark up. See, I'm still learning how to be a director here, but you would think after 106 episodes that would be the case. It's a work in progress. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for everybody commenting. This is really awesome. A huge thanks to Kansas City Audiovisual, kcav.com. They can take care of all of your audiovisual needs, from podcasting to major offices, and to my partners at Enterprise Bank and Trust. #no stopping you. Thank you to them for their continued support, and to all of you for watching. Again, share this with your network. I'll be back with another guest tomorrow, but for now, that's going to do it. I'm Joel Goldberg. Thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.